Hey, welcome to today's video. Today we are doing a GDPR violations and fines update for February 7th, 2019. Why today? Because we have new data out of the EU on GDPR violations and fines, as well as enforcement efforts. So I'm Richard Chapo. I'm an attorney in San Diego, California. I represent online businesses and have done so for the past 20 years or so. So the GDPR is obviously the General Data Protection Regulation, went into effect in May 2018. When it went into effect, many of us thought, probably looking at 6 months before we start seeing serious enforcement efforts and fines and, data correlations and things of that sort. And that's pretty much how it's worked. Of course, now we are seeing violations and fines become public, with the big one, of course, being Google getting hit with a 50 million euro fine by the CNIL in France in January of 2019. You can go to our page here on YouTube, and on the playlist, we have a GDPR cases playlist. I believe it's called Cases, and you can see videos on the different fines that have been issued. But this is more about a general set of numbers that have come in. So what do we know? Well, the report indicates that there have been 95,180 complaints submitted to supervisory authorities by individuals who believe that their rights under the GDPR have been violated. So these complaints break down in different areas, but the vast majority of them are in three areas, and those are telemarketing, promotional emails, and video surveillance, CCTV type situations. So, somebody's put up a video surveillance camera somewhere. And now, with telemarketing, I don't think any of us are probably going to be surprised about that. Unless you work in the telemarketing industry or you use it for marketing, you're probably, giving a thumbs up to the telemarketers getting whacked. Promotional emails. Now, if you have a website or an app, you might immediately be thinking, oh, this is my email list. But maybe not. I think that the situation we're looking at here probably more is devoted to spam. Now, this is one of those things that a lot of people, they kind of wash over when they talk about laws of this sort. So with the GDPR, the promoters, they have this utopian view. Oh, it will eliminate spam. Well, that's just a lie. It's not going to eliminate spam. Spam in Europe was, a violation of rules and regulations before the GDPR. So anybody who was doing it then, well, the passage of the GDPR doesn't impact them at all. They're going to keep doing it. And so I think that's what most of these are devoted to. I mean, let's be honest. If somebody has a server in the Ukraine and they have an email list of 100 million emails and they're living in Singapore, what do they care what Germany thinks? They don't. And Germany can issue big fines and everything else. And, good luck actually collecting on those. So I think that there's probably a large percentage of those emails devoted to spam. Nonetheless, that doesn't mean you should be anything less than totally compliant and trying to build your email list because you want to make sure that, as time passes and maybe these supervisory authorities start looking at smaller sites, that you're not left in a bad position. And then the third subject, video surveillance, CCTV. Again, this is something very European. I don't think most American companies would be particularly worried about this, but it is somewhat ironic because, Europe, government surveillance in Europe is just slightly out of control. If you're in London, there's one government surveillance camera for every 11 people. So I wonder if many of these complaints may actually be against the government. But I'm sure we'll learn more, and it'll be interesting. Obviously, the government's going to say, well, this is a national security issue. And so, the GDPR does not apply. The other information we have is in regard to data breaches, i.e., I've been hacked. And the interesting thing under the GDPR is that you must come forward and report any data breaches that you suffer to your supervisory authority within 72 hours. And a lot of people in the EU are complying with it, and a lot of people are being hacked. And so there were 41,502 data breaches that the EU supervisory authorities were given notice about. So I'll repeat that number, 41,502 in a 6-month period. That's a staggeringly large number. You would have to say the hackers are winning at this point. That is an amazing, amazing number. And the EU has initiated about 255 cross-border investigations, and are also pursuing other investigations into those. Just because you have a data breach doesn't necessarily mean that you'll be fined, but you obviously want to follow the security requirements of the GDPR if you have a sophisticated data collection and storage system. So what about actual fines? Well, obviously we have the Google fine. We've had, other groups. We had an app that was fined 20,000 euros because they were breached and they were storing passwords as text instead of as encrypted information. And there are a couple other fines out there. If you go over to our homepage again, of course, go to the playlist. You'll see GDPR cases. You can see individual videos on most of the fines. Now, the interesting thing that we also have coming out of the EU, not necessarily part of this report, but independently, is that cookies are now being looked at. The German supervisory authority apparently, quote unquote, audited or rated 40 companies and are looking at their usage of cookies and how they're getting consent for cookies. One of the interesting things about the GDPR is you're required to have a legal basis for collecting personal information before doing so. Well, that doesn't really jive with the internet that well, because if somebody lands on your site, your host, your server is automatically going to start collecting information, if nothing else, as well as cookies and beacons and things of that sort. So many of us have kind of wondered how exactly that's going to work out, and it would appear we are about to find out. So the Germans will no doubt be commenting on this and holding up a few examples. You can expect fines in those cases. But that'll be information that probably comes down the line in a couple of months once we know specifically what's going to occur. And finally, if you're a little bit behind on your GDPR compliance, you really want to catch up, but you shouldn't feel all that awful, because there are still some member states in the EU who haven't passed the supporting legislation that they're supposed to pass to support the GDPR. So we're talking Bulgaria, Greece, Slovenia, Portugal, and the Czech Republic. And so they are literally years late, which is interesting to say the least. But unfortunately, you can't use that as an excuse if you have a GDPR violation of fine situation. So anyways, excuse me, that's the update for February 7th, 2019. If you have any questions or comments, post them below and I'll be happy to answer them. If you enjoyed the video, consider giving us a thumbs up. If you didn't, I feel shame. And we'll be obviously posting updates on GDPR topics in the future, so feel free to subscribe to the channel. Thanks.